The bright red on-air sign flickered to life in the Manhattan studio of The Ryan Cole Show, one of the most controversial late-night talk shows in America. The audience erupted in applause as Ryan Cole himself, a brash and often aggressive host known for his left-leaning rants, strutted onto the stage. "Welcome, welcome, folks." Ryan greeted the audience, flashing his signature smirk. "Tonight, we have a very special guest, someone who has made quite a name for herself in the world of law and politics." He paused for dramatic effect. "She's the current U.S. Attorney General working under none other than President Donald Trump. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Pam Bondi." The applause was mixed, some claps, some cheers, and a noticeable smattering of boos. This wasn't unusual. The Ryan Cole Show was notorious for inviting conservative figures only to put them through the ringer. Pam Bondi knew this as well as anyone, but she walked onto the stage with the poise of a seasoned professional. Dressed in an elegant but sharp navy blue suit, she radiated confidence as she took her seat opposite Ryan. "Madam Attorney General," Ryan began, folding his hands theatrically, "welcome to the show." "Thank you, Ryan. It's great to be here," Pam said smoothly, meeting his gaze without hesitation. Ryan leaned forward. "Now, let's get right into it. You've been serving as Attorney General under Donald Trump for over a year now. Some would say your tenure has been, let's call it, controversial." Pam raised an eyebrow. "Every Attorney General faces criticism. It comes with the job." Ryan chuckled. "Fair point. But you've been accused of using your position to shield the president from investigations. You've dismissed allegations against his allies, defunded certain federal probes. Isn't that a blatant abuse of power?" The audience murmured in approval. Ryan had come out swinging and they were ready for blood. Pam, however, didn't flinch. "Ryan, let's talk facts," she said calmly. "The role of the Attorney General isn't to serve political interests but to uphold the law. Any decisions made under my watch are based on legal merit, not partisan bias." Ryan smirked. "Legal merit, huh? So you're saying the investigations into Trump's campaign finances, the accusations of obstruction, those were all without merit?" Pam crossed her legs and leaned forward slightly. "If a case lacks substantial evidence, it's the duty of the Department of Justice to dismiss it. We can't waste taxpayer money on politically motivated witch hunts." A few in the audience clapped, though it was mostly drowned out by a collective groan. Ryan seized the moment. "A witch hunt right out of Trump's playbook," he said mockingly. "So let's talk about something else that might interest you. There's been an outcry over the federal response to civil rights cases under your leadership. Critics say you've turned a blind eye to social justice issues." Pam tilted her head slightly. "Is that what the critics say? Because I recall successfully prosecuting multiple cases of police misconduct, expanding human trafficking task forces, and ensuring tougher penalties for violent crimes. Or do those achievements not fit your narrative?" The audience gasped. Ryan's smirk faltered for a brief second. Pam Bondi had come prepared and she wasn't going to be bullied. Ryan quickly regained his composure. "I'll admit you've made some moves," he said. "But let's be real, there's a reason people say you're Trump's shield. The way you handled the impeachment trials, the Mueller report fallout." Pam held up a hand. "Ryan, let me stop you right there." The room fell silent. She leaned in, her voice steady. "Do you actually care about the facts, or are you just looking for a viral soundbite?" The audience murmured again, this time with intrigue. This wasn't going to be the one-sided ambush they had expected. Ryan narrowed his eyes. "I care about accountability, Madam Attorney General. And I intend to hold you to it." Pam smiled, her confidence unwavering. "Good. Because so do I." Ryan Cole adjusted his tie, a flicker of irritation flashing across his face. He was used to rattling his guests, making them squirm under the heat of his questions. But Pam Bondi wasn't just another politician caught in a scandal, she was a seasoned litigator who had faced far tougher interrogations in courtrooms than she ever would on late-night television. "All right," Ryan said, leaning back. "You want facts? Let's talk about one that's hard to ignore." He pulled out a card from his desk and read aloud, "The Attorney General's office, under your leadership, chose not to pursue charges against several high-profile figures connected to the president, figures like Roger Stone and Paul Manafort, despite overwhelming evidence against them." Pam nodded slightly, already anticipating this line of attack. "Let me correct you there, Ryan. Roger Stone was convicted by a jury in a court of law. The Department of Justice recommended a sentencing guideline, but the final decision was made by the judge. That's how the justice system works. You do believe in the rule of law, don't you?" Ryan hesitated, sensing the trap. "Of course I do." "Good," Pam said smoothly. "Then you also know that a prosecutor's job isn't to act based on media pressure but on legal precedent. If a case lacks sufficient legal standing, it's not about protecting an ally, it's about protecting the integrity of the justice system. Ryan exhaled sharply, tapping his fingers against his desk. Fine. Let's move on to something else. He shifted forward, his expression hardening. What about civil rights? You say your office fights for justice, but under your leadership, federal civil rights investigations have plummeted. Hate crime cases? Down. Police brutality cases? Down. It looks to me like the Justice Department isn't interested in holding the powerful accountable. Pam sat back, her eyes sharp. I'd love to see where you're getting those numbers from. Ryan's lips curled. Public records. Look them up. Pam nodded. I have. And I know what you're referring to. But let me give you the full picture. Federal investigations haven't plummeted. What's changed is how we handle cases. Instead of chasing politically motivated narratives, we've been focusing on cases with concrete evidence, ones where we can actually bring justice to victims, not just push headlines. Ryan scoffed. So, you're saying people should just trust you? Pam's smile didn't waver. No. I'm saying they should look at the convictions, the legal actions we've taken, the reforms we've implemented. That's what real justice looks like. Not media hype, not social media outrage, real, measurable results. The audience murmured. Some nodded in agreement while others remained skeptical. Ryan, however, wasn't done. You're good, Pam. Real good, he said, forcing a grin. But I think the American people want more than just a smooth politician. They want accountability. Pam leaned in, her voice steady. I agree, Ryan. So let's start with you. Do you hold yourself accountable for the way you frame these discussions? Ryan blinked. What are you talking about? Pam gestured around the studio. You invited me here not for a real discussion, but for a spectacle. You wanted to paint me as corrupt, to make me the villain in a political drama. But the truth is, the justice system doesn't work in sound bites or headlines. It works in facts. And the fact is, I do my job with integrity. The audience fell into a hush. Ryan looked momentarily caught off guard. He wasn't used to guests turning the tables on him like this. But he wasn't about to back down. Well, he said, forcing a chuckle, I guess we'll let the American people decide. Pam smiled. We absolutely will. The tension in the studio was thick, the energy electric. The game was far from over. The tension in the studio was palpable. Pam Bondi sat poised, unshaken by Ryan Cole's aggressive questioning, while the host himself seemed momentarily unsettled by her unwavering confidence. The audience, sensing the intensity of the verbal sparring, remained on the edge of their seats. Ryan forced a smirk, his eyes narrowing. All right, Madam Attorney General. Let's shift gears. Since we're talking about integrity, let's discuss a certain little case from your past. A case involving Trump University. A low murmur swept through the audience. This was the moment they had been waiting for, the knockout punch. Pam's expression remained unchanged. She had seen this move coming. Ryan leaned forward dramatically. For those who don't remember, back when you were Florida's Attorney General, your office received complaints about Trump University, a so-called business education program that, as we now know, defrauded thousands of people out of their hard-earned money. Pam tilted her head slightly, unfazed. Ryan continued, his voice laced with accusation. Your office decided not to pursue an investigation into Trump University, right after you received a political donation from Donald Trump himself. How do you explain that? The audience gasped. Ryan sat back, triumphant, expecting Pam to stumble. Instead, she let the moment breathe, waiting just long enough for the silence to make an impact. Then she spoke. Ryan, let's talk facts again. Because I know you like to frame things dramatically, but the reality is far less exciting than the story you're trying to sell. Ryan's smirk faltered. Pam continued, her voice calm and controlled. The Trump University case was a civil matter, not a criminal one. And at the time, Florida's Attorney General's office did not have jurisdiction over the complaints. Those cases were handled at the federal level, where the lawsuits proceeded. Florida taxpayers would not have benefited from duplicating efforts on a case that was already moving through the legal system. Ryan's eyes flickered with frustration. So, you're saying the donation had nothing to do with your decision? Pam's lips curled into a slight smile. Ryan, you know as well as I do that correlation does not equal causation. If every politician who received a donation was guilty of corruption, Then I'd have a long list of names from both parties to bring up right now. The audience let out an audible "oh." Ryan clenched his jaw. But the optics. The optics don't change the facts, Pam interjected. And the fact is, the Trump University lawsuits proceeded, and justice was served. The students got their settlement. End of story. Ryan shifted uncomfortably in his chair. He had planned to corner her, but instead, she had turned his question into a lesson in legal procedure. The audience, even those who weren't on her side, had to respect the way she handled the attack. Pam leaned in slightly. You see, Ryan, this is what I mean when I talk about accountability. You present half-truths designed to generate outrage, but you don't bother with the full context. That's not journalism, that's show business. A few people in the audience clapped. Ryan's face darkened. I am a journalist, he snapped, and I believe in exposing the truth. Pam smiled. Then you should start by being truthful yourself. The audience erupted, some in applause, some in shock. Ryan's usual game had just been flipped on its head. He exhaled, composing himself. You're quite the debater, Attorney General. Pam's smile didn't fade. It's not about debating, Ryan. It's about knowing what you stand for. For the first time that night, Ryan Cole had no immediate comeback. Ryan Cole's usual smug confidence had taken a hit. He shifted in his chair, adjusting his cuffs, trying to regain control of the conversation. The audience had expected a takedown, a viral moment where he would expose Pam Bondi as another corrupt politician. Instead, she had remained composed, deflecting every attack with precision. But Ryan wasn't done yet. All right, Pam, he said, voice sharp. Since we're talking about knowing what you stand for, let's address something millions of Americans really care about: women's rights. Pam raised an eyebrow but said nothing, allowing him to continue. Ryan leaned forward, his tone dripping with accusation. Under your leadership as Attorney General, the Justice Department has actively opposed abortion rights, fought against expansions of LGBTQ protections, and resisted federal oversight on gender discrimination cases. You talk about justice, but how do you justify standing against basic human rights? The audience erupted into applause and cheers. This was Ryan's home turf. He knew that his viewers leaned progressive, and he had just tapped into one of the most emotionally charged topics in modern politics. Pam, however, didn't blink. She adjusted her posture slightly, then spoke. Ryan, first, let me correct something. You just lumped together a wide range of legal matters under the vague label of basic human rights. The reality is that every one of those issues involves complex constitutional and legal questions. And as Attorney General, my job is to interpret and uphold the law, not to push a personal agenda. Ryan scoffed. So, you're saying the law justifies oppression? Pam exhaled lightly, shaking her head. I'm saying the law is bigger than personal opinions. You talk about abortion rights. Let's be clear, my stance is rooted in respecting the constitutional authority of individual states to govern their own laws. That's not oppression, that's federalism. That's the system the Founding Fathers put in place to prevent federal overreach. Some members of the audience clapped, though others booed. Ryan saw an opening. So you're hiding behind state rights to justify rolling back decades of progress? Pam met his gaze. I'm upholding legal principles. If Congress passes a law that changes federal policy, I will enforce it. But until then, I will not overstep my authority to push my own beliefs, unlike some of my predecessors. The audience murmured. Ryan's jaw tightened. Pam continued, unfazed. As for LGBTQ protections, let's talk facts again. The Justice Department has not removed protections, it has reinforced the legal process to ensure that laws passed by Congress are applied fairly. And gender discrimination? My office has prosecuted more workplace discrimination cases than the previous administration. So, Ryan, I'd ask you, are you interested in the truth or just a convenient headline? Ryan gritted his teeth. You're spinning this like a career politician. Pam smiled. And you're spinning it like a talk show host. The audience roared. Ryan Cole, the king of late-night political debates, was losing his grip on the conversation. His frustration was showing. He ran a hand through his hair, chuckling bitterly. You really know how to play the game, don't you? Pam's expression didn't change. No, Ryan. I just refuse to play yours. Ryan Cole was running out of moves. His usual tactics, leading questions, emotional appeals, and selective outrage had failed to corner Pam Bondi. Instead, she had methodically dismantled his arguments, turning his own techniques against him. The audience, once firmly on Ryan's side, now seemed divided. But Ryan wasn't ready to concede. He had one last card to play. With a slow, deliberate smirk, he leaned in. Okay, Pam. You've talked a lot about the law, about fairness, about not bending to political narratives. But let's be real, you work for Donald Trump. The audience erupted into cheers and jeers, sensing the climax of the debate. Ryan's smirk widened. You expect the American people to believe that an attorney general handpicked by Trump, a man known for bending the law to his will, is actually independent? That you're not just protecting him and his interests? Pam remained still. For a moment, the entire studio seemed to hold its breath. Then she spoke. You're right, Ryan. The words hung in the air. Ryan's eyes flashed with victory. He had her. But then she continued. I do work for President Trump. Just like Eric Holder worked for Barack Obama. Just like Janet Reno worked for Bill Clinton. The Attorney General always serves under the president who appoints them. That's how the system works. Ryan's smirk faded. Pam pressed on. But here's what you're missing. I took an oath to uphold the law, not to serve any individual. And if President Trump or anyone tried to pressure me to break the law, they'd find out very quickly that I don't bend. The audience murmured. Ryan tried to interject, but Pam wasn't done. You see, Ryan, your entire argument is based on the idea that I must be corrupt simply because I was appointed by someone you don't like. That's not journalism. That's bias. You didn't ask me about the cases I have prosecuted. You didn't ask about the criminal networks we've dismantled, the child exploitation rings we've shut down, or the thousands of criminals we've put behind bars under my watch. Because those don't fit the story you want to tell. Ryan opened his mouth, then closed it. Pam continued, her voice unwavering. So let me say this, loud and clear, for you and for every American watching, I serve this country. I serve the law. And I will never apologize for doing my job with integrity. The audience exploded. Some cheered, some booed, but the energy in the room was undeniable. Ryan, visibly rattled, fumbled for a response. But Pam simply turned to face the camera, her message delivered. Ryan forced a chuckle, trying to regain control. Well, Pam, it's been interesting having you here tonight. Pam smiled. It certainly has. The credits rolled. The show ended. And by morning, the headlines would be ablaze with one undeniable truth. Pam Bondi had walked into Ryan Cole's arena and left without a scratch.